Hi, this is Malindi at Paris Living. I hope everyone watching this is enjoying their summer wherever they are. Today I'm going to do part 2 of the best and worst areas of Paris. In part 1, the last video that I posted was for arrondissement 1 through 10, and now I'm going to talk about 11 through 20. Just a quick note about these arrondissements. When you look at the map of Paris, you'll see that the arrondissements are arranged in a spiral pattern, what the French would refer to as an escargot. Therefore, the arrondissements with higher numbers are almost all on the outside and have a border with the city limits. Paris proper is encircled by a beltway called the périphérique, and then within the périphérique, there is an inner loop called the boulevard Maréchaux, and the name of the boulevard changes every several hundred meters and are all named after famous French generals. To save some time, I'll just say from the start that all over Paris, the areas between the boulevard Maréchaux and the périphérique are areas that I would avoid very simply because they feel a bit dead, and who wants to be near the chaos and pollution of the beltway? Many sections of the boulevard Maréchaux now have the new tram lines running through, which is a really nice mode of transportation. So let's get started with the 11th arrondissement, which has been much sought after in the past 5 to 7 years. On the whole, I really like the 11th. It's a young, fun area, a lot of good restaurants and bars, a lot of young families. The areas I might avoid in particular would be Rue de la Roquette between Place de la Bastille and Place Voltaire, as well as Rue Oberkampf between Parmentier and Ménilmontant. Just because those streets are really saturated with bars that open late, to the point where there's actually a city injunction against any new establishments with liquor licenses. Places that I personally like would be around Square Gardette, which is a really charming little park, and Place Voltaire, which has a lot of good commerce de bouche, so like the cheese guy, the butcher, the bakery, the farmer's market, etc. Moving on to the 12th arrondissement. I like the 12th a lot. It's pretty quiet and residential, especially compared to the 11th. There aren't many places to avoid in the 12th, except for maybe the area right around Gare de Lyon, which is a big train station, and all the tracks leading out of it through Porte de Bercy, which is another area to avoid in itself. Places I really like in the 12th would include around Métro Faidherbe-Chaligny, including the famous Marché d'Aligre, which is a huge covered market not far from Bastille. And then there's Bercy Village, which is a really charming cobblestone pedestrian shopping area. I like that a lot. Moving on to the 13th arrondissement, probably the arrondissement that I know the least since I never have any demand for property there and I don't really have much reason to go there otherwise. However, there has been something of a renaissance with this relatively new thing called Station F, which is a huge startup incubator at Metro Bibliothèque. It has attracted a young techie crowd and then has all the restaurants, bars, and nightlife that service all those people who are working and living there now. The other area that I like in the 13th is called the Butokai, which is a small neighborhood with windy cobblestone streets and lovely cafes. It's small but really charming. Any other areas I would avoid would be around Metro Olympiade, where there's just a ton of ugly high-rises. But then in the 14th, on the other hand, is one of my favorite arrondissements. It's directly south of the 6th, has gorgeous architecture, good shopping, restaurants, and commerce de bouche. I like the areas around Denfert-Rochereau, Mouton du Vernet, and Alésia. I might avoid stretches of Boulevard Saint-Jacques where the line 6 is elevated, and then anywhere near Gare Montparnasse and the railway coming out. The 15th arrondissement is the biggest arrondissement in Paris. I like it overall. I think it's a good quality neighborhood for families, and part of it has a bank on the Seine. I like Metro Convention and Boucicaut. Areas I might avoid would be, again, on the other side of Gare de Montparnasse and all the railway tracks leading south out of it. And then there's kind of a no man's land near Parc Georges Brassens, and it's just due to lack of metro access. And then lastly, there is a section of the Boulevard Grenelle where the line 6 is elevated. The 16th arrondissement has traditionally been split into north and south until recently. They actually had different zip codes, 75016 for the south and 75116 for the north. The southern part used to feel like a retirement community, but that has really changed. Even all the way down to Porte de Saint-Cloud, it's much more lively, and there are open air markets. Some of the main drags have really good shopping, and it's slowly attracting a younger crowd. The immediate proximity to the Bois de Boulogne, which is a sprawling 2,000-acre park on the edge of the city, has a really big positive impact on property value in a city that doesn't have as many green spaces as like London, for example. And with climate change, that access to nature has sadly become a luxury, and people will pay for it. I really like Place Victor Hugo and Passy Village. The area between Avenue Kléber and Avenue Marceau is very ritzy, so if you can afford it. The only place I would avoid would be along Avenue de la Grande Armée. It's just like car dealerships and gas stations and has a weird vibe. The 17th arrondissement overall is great, beautiful architecture, good quality neighborhoods. The western part is more bourgeois and the eastern part is like much more bobo. Places I particularly like would be Metro Courcelles, Metro Villiers. Parc Monceau is technically in the 8th, but it's right on the border there on the 17th. And then in the east, Les Batignolles is a really fun young neighborhood with great restaurants and shops. It's very bobo, but honestly, it's a great neighborhood. Places to avoid would be between Place de l'Étoile and Porte-Maillot, between Avenue des Ternes and Avenue de la Grande Armée. That area is just... it's just weird. I'm not sure how to describe it, but it's kind of dead in the evening. On to the 18th. Famous for Montmartre, Sacré-Cœur. There's a section that is overrun by tourists every year between the metro and the path up to Sacré-Cœur, and I'd probably avoid being adjacent to that path. Otherwise, Montmartre is incredibly charming. There's Rue Le Pic, Rue Lamarck. And then on the other side of the Butte, is Metro Jules Geoffrin, which is also a great area and I think has some really good opportunities. The places I would avoid would be east of Rue de Clignancourt and all the way past the railway tracks into the 19th. The 19th to me is split into two distinct areas by the canal. West of the canal, after Avenue de Flandre, I would not invest. There are too many unsightly, massive residential complexes that are not going anywhere anytime soon. On the east side of the canal, however, it's a different story. There's the canal itself, which has tons of cafes up and down, and two really popular movie theaters. During the summer, they do Paris Plage, which includes swimming areas, kayaking, sunbathing, different food and ice cream stands, and a lot more. It's really nice during the summer. Further up the canal, there's Parc de la Villette, which always has a lot going on, especially in the Grande Halle. They have art and dance expos, sometimes trade shows. And then there's the Philharmonic, which opened in 2015. The facade is made of cast aluminum and stainless steel. Personally, I love it. Some people hate it, think it's an eyesore. The inside's kind of kitsch, but the acoustics are fantastic. Then there is the Parc des Buttes-Chaumont, my favorite park in Paris, bar none. It was an old open-air gypsum mine, and then they transformed it into a beautiful park. It has tons of topography. There's several restaurants. There are gorgeous vistas. I've been here 20 years, and to me, it never gets old. Above the park, there's a place called Moussaïa, which is cobblestone streets called villas with townhouses on either side, and it's so charming. And then there's the Jardin neighborhood, which has been really popular over the last 10 years. It kind of has this Brooklyn, before Brooklyn got expensive vibe, and there's a lot to like. And then finally, the 20th arrondissement, that includes famously the Père Lachaise Cemetery. I don't really have any areas to avoid, except maybe facing the boulevards Belleville, Ménilmontant, and Charonne. There are bi-weekly farmers markets, but otherwise there's just a lot of traffic and noise. And then the road called Cours de Vincennes, which is this main drag leading out of Paris into the suburb of Montreuil. The popular spots like around Gambetta are really nice. And then, of course, there's the Campagne à Paris, the countryside in Paris, which is like Moussaïa but nicer. Winding cobblestone streets and some really beautiful, expensive houses. So that's a wrap on the best and worst in Paris's 11th through 20th arrondissement, which I hope has been helpful or at least informative. And as always, feel free to reach out to me by email or WhatsApp. I'm always happy to have a chat about the market and your interest in acquiring property here. Bonne journée à toutes et à tous.